My phone buzzed for the 12th time that morning. I didn't even bother checking the screen anymore. Instead, I stared at the massive monitor on the conference room wall displaying the glaring red alert: Northview Strategies, operational budget imbalance, $437,000 unaccounted. The silence in the room was deafening. 7 executive board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces a mixture of shock, anger, and confusion. The CFO, Martin Winters, kept refreshing his tablet as if the numbers might magically change. They didn't. And then came the call I'd been expecting all morning. Denise, the same woman who had mocked me just 3 weeks earlier in front of the entire department, calling my promotion document a waste of office ink. The same boss who said I was emotional and overreaching when I proposed new financial controls that could have prevented this exact situation. Now, she was calling from the airport, her voice shaking, her perfectly curated executive tone cracking like thin ice on a warm day. "Rachel, I need you now," she said, the desperation palpable. "The board is asking about the numbers. No one knows where the money went. They're blaming me. Please, can you come fix this?" I took a deep breath and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even satisfaction, just clarity. "I'll be right there," I said, hanging up before she could respond. My heels clicked against the polished concrete floors of Northview's modern Austin headquarters as I walked down the hallway I'd traversed thousands of times before, past the glass-walled offices where Denise's favorites lounged with their MacBooks and designer coffees, past the framed awards Denise claimed credit for, though I'd written half the winning proposals, past the conference room where 3 weeks ago I'd been humiliated. I paused at the doorway of the main boardroom, clutching my laptop and the folder containing every piece of documentation I'd compiled since noticing the first financial discrepancies 2 months ago. I walked into the room where the entire executive team sat in tense silence and said, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a waste of office ink." The whole room froze. Martin Winters was the first to recover. "Rachel, thank God you're here. We have a situation." "I know," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've been tracking it for months." I connected my laptop to the display. The red warning disappeared, replaced by my meticulously organized spreadsheets, transaction logs, and audit trails, all color-coded, annotated, and painfully clear. "This isn't just an accounting error," I continued, navigating through my files with practiced precision. "It's a systematic pattern of financial mismanagement spanning the last 7 months." I clicked to the next slide, revealing a timeline that pinpointed exactly when things started going wrong. It coincided perfectly with Denise's promotion to Vice President of Operations 8 months ago. "As you can see," I continued, "client reimbursements have been consistently double-processed. Money allocated for vendor payments was diverted to unspecified team development events, and expense reports were approved without proper documentation." The CEO, Richard Hammond, leaned forward, his gray eyes narrowing. "And you've been tracking this. How long?" "Since I noticed the first anomalies 2 months ago, sir. I compiled an initial report and submitted it to Denise as part of my promotion to operations strategy coordinator." I paused, letting the words sink in. She dismissed it as unnecessary. Richard's jaw tightened. "And where is Denise now?" "At the airport," I said. "Returning from Cancun, the company-sponsored strategy retreat that wasn't in any approved budget." The tension in the room thickened. "Show me everything," Richard commanded. For the next 40 minutes, I walked them through every discrepancy, every irregular transaction, every suspicious approval. I showed them how the company's money had been slowly bleeding away to fund Denise's lavish, team-building excursions with her inner circle, trips to Napa Valley, weekend workshops at luxury resorts, the recent Cancun retreat that cost more than my annual salary. I showed them how she'd manipulated the system I'd built, exploiting loopholes I'd actually flagged in my report, the one she'd mocked publicly. The CFO looked physically ill. This is financial misconduct," the company lawyer finished for him, her voice grave. The door swung open, and there she stood. Denise Marshall, still in her resort wear, white linen pants and a silk blouse, her designer sunglasses pushed up into her perfectly highlighted hair. Her tan couldn't hide how pale she'd suddenly become. "What's going on?" she demanded, though her voice lacked its usual authority. Her eyes locked with mine, and for a brief moment, I saw something I'd never seen from her before: fear. Richard stood up slowly. "Denise, we need to talk. Privately." As they left the room, the remaining executives bombarded me with questions. How had I caught this? Why hadn't I come forward sooner? Didn't I realize the seriousness of the situation? I answered calmly, professionally, without emotion. I explained how I'd tried to address it through proper channels, how I'd been systematically sidelined, my access restricted, my concerns dismissed. She called me Sherlock Holmes like it was an insult, I said quietly. But that's exactly who you needed. An hour later, I was called into Richard's office. Denise wasn't there. She's been suspended pending investigation, he said without preamble. The board wants you to lead the full audit. You'll report directly to me until this is resolved. I nodded, maintaining my composure despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Rachel, he continued, studying me carefully. Why didn't you come directly to me when she dismissed your report? The question caught me off guard. Why hadn't I? The answer was both simple and complicated. Because I was raised to respect authority, sir, I said finally. And because people like me, we're taught to keep our heads down, do the work, don't make waves. People like you? He asked, one eyebrow raised. People who had to clean office. Buildings at night to pay for college, I clarified. People whose parents crossed borders for a better life. People who didn't go to the right schools or know the right people. Richard nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Well, he said, it seems to me we need more people like you making waves around here. As I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed again. Denise calling for the 13th time. I let it ring. My mother always told me that dignity wasn't something anyone could take from you. You had to give it away. Standing in the elevator the next morning, watching the numbers climb toward the 14th floor, I thought about how close I'd come to giving mine away. The doors opened to a transformed office, where yesterday there had been the usual morning bustle of coffee, runs, and casual gossip. Today, there was tense, hushed conversation. Heads turned as I walked in, and the whispers intensified. Ethan Ross, the senior analyst who'd been one of the few to acknowledge my work over the years, intercepted me before I reached my cubicle. Conference room B, he said quietly. Full audit team meeting in 15 minutes. Richard wants you to lead it. I nodded, trying to appear calmer than I felt. Thanks, Ethan. You okay? He asked, his voice low. This is a lot. I'm fine, I replied automatically, the way I always did. He gave me a look that said he didn't believe me but wouldn't push. They've frozen all of Denise's accounts. Email, access cards, everything. The whole favorites club is panicking. I glanced toward the cluster of desks where Denise's inner circle usually gathered. Sure enough, they were huddled together, throwing anxious glances my way. These were the same people who'd laughed when Denise mocked my report. The same ones who'd gone to Cancun while I stayed behind, working overtime to cover their unfinished projects. They should be worried, I said, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. Ethan's eyebrows shot up. Rachel, Alvarez showing teeth? I like it. I managed a small smile as I continued to my desk. 3 new emails from HR waited in my inbox, along with a calendar invitation for a meeting with the CEO and board that afternoon. My promotion to Operations Strategy Coordinator, the one Denise had undermined at every turn, had been a joke yesterday. Today, it felt like the only thing keeping the company afloat. As I organized my notes for the audit team meeting, I thought back to how it all began. Not the financial discrepancies, those were just symptoms. It started the day Denise was hired 2 years ago. She'd swept in from a prestigious firm in New York, all designer suits and industry connections, promising to transform Northview from a respectable mid-size agency into a powerhouse player. I'd been with the company for 4 years by then, working my way up from unpaid intern to systems coordinator. I'd built our client management database from scratch, implemented tracking systems that saved thousands in billable hours, and trained half the staff on our proprietary software. None of that mattered to Denise. From day one, she'd drawn her circle, and I wasn't in it. Not young enough, not trendy enough, not connected enough. When she looked at me, if she looked at me at all, she saw a worker bee, not a rising star. Rachel? I looked up to find Maya Chen, our HR director, standing by my desk. Do you have a minute before the audit meeting? I nodded and followed her to her office. A small but warmly decorated space with plants on every surface, and inspirational quotes framed on the walls. She closed the door behind us. I owe you an apology, she said, getting straight to the point. When you came to me about the team dynamics issues with Denise 3 months ago, I brushed it off as standard adjustment difficulties. I remembered that conversation. After Denise had excluded me from a major client presentation I'd prepared all the materials for, I'd finally broken my silence and gone to HR. Maya had been sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful. Politics exist in every workplace, she'd told me. Sometimes we have to adapt. It's fine, I said automatically. No, it's not, Maya insisted. I should have looked deeper. The pattern was there. Denise systematically sidelined anyone who might outshine her or question her methods. She sighed. Especially women of color who didn't fit her mold. The acknowledgement hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd told myself it was just business, just politics, just the way things were. Hearing someone in authority validate what I'd experienced felt both vindicating and unsettling. What happens now? I asked. Full investigation. The board is taking this extremely seriously. Financial misconduct, possible embezzlement, hostile workplace environment. She leaned forward. They're going to need your testimony, Rachel. All of it. The professional exclusion, the undermined promotion, the restricted access that prevented you from catching this sooner. My stomach tightened. I don't want this to be about personal grievances. The financial evidence speaks for itself. It's not just about you, Maya said gently. We've already had 3 other employees come forward this morning with similar experiences. Denise created a toxic pattern that allowed this financial situation to develop. The board needs to understand the full context to prevent it from happening again. I nodded, processing this new reality where my voice actually mattered. The audit meeting was scheduled to begin in 5 minutes. I stood up, smoothing my skirt, a simple navy pencil skirt, not the designer labels Denise and her circle favored. Rachel, Maya called as I reached the door. For what it's worth, I checked your personnel file this morning. Your performance reviews for the past 5 years have been exceptional. The only negative feedback came after Denise arrived, and it's all subjective. Lacks executive presence. Needs to, be more assertive in group settings. Communication style needs refinement. I'd heard all those critiques directly from Denise, each one delivered with a smile that never reached her eyes. The board has seen your file too, Maya continued. They know who you really are. The audit meeting was already full when I arrived. 15 people, including senior financial analysts, 2 board members, and our external accounting firm representatives, all waiting for me. For me, Rachel Alvarez, the invisible worker bee. As I connected my laptop to the display and prepared to lead them through the financial labyrinth I'd mapped, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number, but I immediately knew who it was. Rachel, please. They're not letting me explain. You know this is just a misunderstanding. I've always supported you. Call me back. Denise. I placed my phone face down on the table and looked up at the roomful of expectant faces. Good morning, I said, my voice clear and confident. Let's begin with the client reimbursement system and how it was exploited. As you'll see on page 1 of your packets, for the first time in my professional life, everyone was listening, and I had plenty to say. 3 days after the audit meeting, Northview Strategies felt like a different company. Gone was the artificial cheerfulness that had masked the underlying tensions. Instead, there was a strange mixture of focused intensity and cautious optimism as people adjusted to the rapidly changing power dynamics. I'd been temporarily relocated to a small conference room that served as my command center for the ongoing investigation. Spreadsheets and financial records covered the walls, connected by color-coded strings that tracked money flows through various accounts. It looked like something from a crime procedural show, which Ethan had pointed out with amusement. Detective Alvarez, he said, leaning against the doorframe with 2 coffee cups in hand. Brought. You fuel. You've been in here since 6 a.m. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Thanks. Did the bank send over the transfer authorizations? Just arrived. He placed a folder on the table. Along with something interesting. Seems Denise has been making calls to several employees, including members of her inner circle. HR is concerned about witness tampering. I wasn't surprised. In the past days, Denise had called me 17 times and sent dozens of text messages ranging from pleading to thinly veiled threats. I'd forwarded them all to HR without responding. Who's she contacting? I asked. Mostly her favorites, but also you, obviously, and a few others who weren't in her circle. Like me. He looked uncomfortable. She offered me a director position if I'd speak up for her. Said it was all a big misunderstanding. The door opened before I could respond. Richard Hammond entered, followed by the company lawyer Vivian Taylor. Rachel, Ethan, Richard nodded. Good, you're both here. We need to discuss next steps. The gravity in his voice sent a chill through me. Is something wrong with the audit? On the contrary, Vivian said, placing her leather portfolio on the table. Your documentation is meticulous. The picture you've painted is clear enough that the board has made some decisions. Richard took a seat across from me. Denise has been terminated, effective immediately. Her severance has been withheld pending the final financial assessment. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt strangely hollow. And the others? Her team? We're evaluating each person. Individually, Richard said. Those who knowingly participated in financial misconduct will face consequences. Those who were merely favored without direct involvement will undergo ethics training and reassignment. Ethan cleared his throat. And the operational structure? With Denise gone? That's the other reason we're here, Richard said, his gaze fixed on me. The board has created a new position, Director of Operational Integrity. Direct report to me, oversight of all financial operations, compliance, and internal controls. My heart stuttered. That sounds like a VP-level position. It is, Vivian confirmed, and we're offering it to you, Rachel. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Just 3 weeks ago, I'd been mocked for taking my minor promotion seriously. Now they were offering me a vice presidency? Why me? The question escaped before I could stop it. Richard looked genuinely surprised. Because you've proven yourself in the most definitive way possible. You identified a critical problem, documented it thoroughly despite obstruction, and presented a clear path forward. That's exactly what we need. We're prepared to offer a compensation package commensurate with the responsibility, Vivian added, sliding a folder toward me, including retroactive adjustment for your previous position, which was clearly undervalued. I glanced at the numbers and nearly choked on my coffee. The salary was more than double what I currently made. I'll need time to consider it, I said, struggling to maintain my composure. Of course, Richard agreed. But there's one more thing. The board would also like your input on a new company policy regarding whistleblower protection and reporting structures for ethical concerns. We want to ensure nothing like this happens again. The request unlocked something in me, a certainty I hadn't felt before. I'll accept the position, I said, but I have conditions. Richard raised an eyebrow, but nodded for me to continue. First, I want a formal review of all promotions and compensation adjustments made under Denise's leadership. There are people who were overlooked and undervalued, not just me. Reasonable, Vivian noted, jotting something down. Second, I want to restructure the operations team completely. No more inner circles, no more favorites. Transparent metrics for performance and advancement. Richard, why? Nodded again. We expected as much. And third, I continued, my voice steady, I want to establish a mentorship program for employees from non-traditional backgrounds. First-generation professionals, people without fancy degrees or connections, the ones who work twice as hard for half the recognition. The room fell silent. Ethan was staring at me with something like pride. Vivian had stopped. Writing. Richard studied me thoughtfully. That's very specific, he said finally. It's necessary, I replied. Northview talks about diversity in our external messaging, but internally, we're still promoting the same types of people, still valuing the same narrow definition of executive presence. I was lucky. My work was too critical to ignore completely. Others haven't been so fortunate. Richard exchanged glances with Vivian, who gave a slight nod. Develop a proposal, he said. If it's as thorough as your financial audit, I suspect the board will approve it. After they left, Ethan whistled low. Director of Operational Integrity. Sounds fancy. Sounds terrifying, I admitted. You'll be amazing, he said with certainty. Just promise you won't create your own inner circle of favorites. I smiled, the first genuine smile in days. Not a chance. Though I might need a deputy director. Are you offering me a job, Rachel Alvarez? He asked, eyes widening. I'm considering it. You were the only one who saw what was happening and tried to warn me. That's the kind of integrity I need on my team. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Word of the leadership change spread quickly. And by afternoon, my email was flooded with congratulations from colleagues who'd barely acknowledged my existence before. It was surreal and slightly uncomfortable. As I was gathering my things to leave that evening, Maya appeared at my door. Got a minute? She asked. There's someone I think you should talk to. She stepped aside to reveal a young woman I recognized vaguely from the creative department. Lucia Reyes, a junior graphic designer who'd started about 6 months ago. Ms. Alvarez, Lucia began nervously, I wanted to thank you. When she was still here, she told me I wasn't Northview material. That I should look for opportunities elsewhere because I didn't have the right presentation. Her voice caught. After what happened, HR reviewed recent terminations and found my file was being processed without proper documentation. I felt a surge of anger on her behalf. I'm so sorry that happened to you. HR stopped it, Lucia continued. They're giving me a real chance now. And I heard it's because of you. Because you stood up. The impact of what had happened, what was still happening, finally hit me fully. This wasn't just about financial misconduct or my own career. It was about breaking a cycle that hurt real people. It wasn't just me, I said, meaning it. It took everyone speaking up together. As Lucia left, Maya lingered. There are 5 more stories like hers, she said quietly. Denise was systematically pushing out anyone who didn't fit her vision, especially women of color. We're reviewing all of it now. I sat heavily in my chair, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. I never wanted to be the center of some company revolution. Maya smiled gently. The best leaders rarely do. The next morning, I arrived at Northview to find a small cactus on my temporary desk with a note. Tough, resilient, thrives in harsh conditions. Reminded me of someone. E. I smiled at Ethan's gift, touching one of the spines gently. It was oddly perfect. I'd always been drawn to plants that survived where others couldn't. My phone rang, displaying a number I now recognized all too well. Denise, calling for what had to be the 30th time. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rachel, her voice was stripped of its usual polish, raw with desperation. Thank God you picked up. We need to talk. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Denise, I replied evenly. The numbers speak for themselves. Numbers can be interpreted different ways, she insisted. You know that better than anyone. If you just let me explain to the board, I'm not the one stopping you from explaining anything, but they'll listen to you. Her voice cracked. Rachel, please. My entire career is being destroyed over some accounting discrepancies. Is that really what you want? After everything I did for you? The audacity nearly took my breath away. What exactly did you do for me, Denise? I promoted you. I gave you responsibilities. You mocked me in front of the entire department. I interrupted, my voice calm despite the anger bubbling. Beneath the surface. You called my work a waste of office ink when I tried to warn you about the very problems that are now ending your career. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. We both know what this is really about. You've been waiting for a chance to take me down because you were jealous. You never fit in with the team, never understood the culture I was trying to build. You're right about one thing, I conceded. I never fit into your vision of what this company should be. Neither did Lucia Reyes or Jamie Chen or any of the other talented people you pushed aside because they didn't match your preferred profile. This isn't about diversity, she scoffed. It's about professionalism and presence. Something you clearly save it for your lawyer, Denise. I cut her off. This conversation is over. You'll regret this, she hissed. You think they see you as an equal now? You're still just the help to them. When they're done using you to clean up this mess, they'll replace you with someone who actually looks like a director. I ended the call, my hand trembling slightly. Despite everything, her words had found their target. The doubts that had plagued me my entire career, that I was an imposter, that I didn't belong in leadership, that people like me were tolerated but never truly accepted, threatened to resurface. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Richard, looking uncharacteristically casual in a button-down shirt without a tie. Everything all right? He asked, noticing my expression. Fine, I said, automatically. Just another call from Denise. He frowned. You shouldn't be talking to her. The legal team was clear. I know, it won't happen again. Richard hesitated, then closed the door and took a seat across from me. Rachel, there's something I need to say, and I'm not very good at this sort of thing. He looked uncomfortable but determined. I failed as a CEO. Of all the things I expected him to say, that wasn't on the list. Sir? I created a culture where someone like Denise could thrive while marginalizing valuable team members. I was so focused on growth metrics that I missed the rot setting in beneath the surface. He met my gaze directly. I owe you an apology. I didn't know how to respond. In my entire professional life, I'd never had a superior acknowledge a mistake so directly. You don't need to apologize to me, I said finally. You took action as soon as you understood what was happening. That's generous, but not entirely accurate, he countered. There were signs I chose not to see. The high turnover in departments under Denise's control, the homogeneity of her rising stars, the way certain voices were amplified while others were silenced. He sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. I've been doing a lot of reflection, and I have to ask, why didn't you come directly to me when she dismissed your report? I considered my answer carefully. Honestly, because I didn't think it would make a difference. In my experience, people at your level trust people like Denise instinctively. They don't see people like me, not really. People like you? People without pedigrees. People who had to fight for every opportunity. People who don't naturally command attention when they walk into a room. I surprised myself with my candor. From where I sit, the Denises of the world start the race halfway to the finish line, while the rest of us have to run twice as fast just to stay in view. Richard was quiet for a long moment. That's a hard truth to hear, but a necessary one. Thank you for your honesty. He stood, straightening his shirt. The board meeting is at 11. They'll want an update on the audit and your thoughts on restructuring the department. As he reached for the door, he paused. For what it's worth, Rachel, I see you now. And I'm not the only one. The board meeting was unlike any I'd experienced before. Instead of being asked to prepare materials and then wait outside, I was seated at the main table, directly to Richard's right. 8 board members, most of whom I'd only glimpsed in passing over the years, listened attentively as I presented my findings and recommendations. The systematic nature of these financial discrepancies suggests this wasn't just sloppy accounting, I explained, moving through my presentation with a confidence that felt both foreign and natural. There was intent to obscure where money was going and who authorized its movement. And your recommendation for preventing this in the future? Asked Eleanor Wright, the most senior board member. A complete restructuring of authorization protocols, I replied. No single individual should have the power to both initiate and approve financial transactions above a certain threshold. Additionally, regular rotation of audit personnel, mandatory financial ethics training for all leadership, and a clear, protected reporting channel for employees who notice irregularities. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Thorough and practical. Now, what about your department? How do you plan to rebuild after this disruption? I outlined my vision for operations: transparent, collaborative, merit-based. I explained my idea for the mentorship program and the importance of creating pathways for overlooked talent. When I finished, the board was silent for a moment. Then Eleanor spoke again, her tone measured but warm. Ms. Alvarez, in my 30 years of corporate governance, I've seen many financial scandals. They typically unfold in one of two ways. Either someone blows the whistle out of spite and walks away, or someone quietly colludes and profits from the chaos. She studied me thoughtfully. You did neither. You identified a problem, documented it meticulously, tried to address it through proper channels, and when that failed, you stood your ground without seeking personal advantage. That kind of integrity is rare, and exactly what Northview needs right now. The vote to approve my appointment and initiatives was unanimous. As the meeting adjourned and board members filtered out, Eleanor lingered, approaching me directly. A word of advice, she said quietly. The hardest part isn't exposing wrongdoing. It's what comes after, rebuilding what was broken, earning trust, becoming the leader you wish you'd had. She smiled slightly. Based on what I've seen today, I think you're more than equal to the task. Walking back to my temporary office, I felt lighter somehow. The doubts were still there. Maybe they always would be. But they were balanced now by something stronger, the knowledge that I'd acted with integrity, and that it mattered. Ethan was waiting outside my door, practically bouncing with nervous energy. Well, he demanded. What happened? I smiled, the reality still sinking in. They approved everything. The position, the restructuring, the mentorship program, all of it. I knew it, he grinned widely. Director Alvarez has a nice ring to it. It's going to be a lot of work, I warned. The best things usually are, he replied. So, when do we start? We? Deputy Director Ross, at your service. He gave a mock bow. Unless you've changed your mind? I hadn't. In fact, I'd already submitted his name for the position, along with a detailed justification for the promotion. Monday, I said. We start rebuilding on Monday. The weekend after my appointment as Director of Operational Integrity was the first time I'd allowed myself to truly process everything that had happened. Sitting on the balcony of my modest apartment with a cup of coffee, I watched the Austin skyline transition from dawn to full morning light. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Mija, Don't forget dinner tonight. Your father is making his famous carne asada. I smiled, imagining their pride when I told them about my promotion. My parents had crossed the border from Mexico 30 years ago with nothing but determination and dreams for their children. My father had worked construction jobs while my mother cleaned houses, both of them taking night classes to learn English. They'd scraped together enough for a small house in a working-class neighborhood where I'd grown up understanding that education was my ticket to a different life. Education is the one thing they can never take from you, my father always said. He was right, but he'd never mentioned how many other things could be taken or withheld. Recognition, opportunity, belonging. Those were battles I'd had to learn to fight on my own. I texted back, "I'll be there at 6. Big news to share." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation for Monday. I reviewed personnel files, drafted a department restructuring plan, and outlined the mentorship program I'd proposed. By late afternoon, I was mentally exhausted but satisfied with my progress. My parents' house hadn't changed much over the years. The same well-worn furniture, family photos covering the walls, the smell of spices and home that always wrapped around me like a blanket. As soon as I walked in, my mother enveloped me in a hug. "Rachel, you look tired. Are you eating? Sleeping?" The rapid-fire questions in Spanglish made me smile. "I'm fine, Mama. Just busy with work." My father appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. At 62, he still stood straight and proud despite decades of physical labor that had left his hands permanently calloused. "There's my girl," he said, kissing my cheek. "Always working. Too hard." Over dinner, I told them about the past weeks. The financial discovery, Denise's betrayal, my new position. I downplayed the confrontations and stress, focusing instead on the positive outcome. But my parents weren't fooled. "This woman, this Denise," my mother said, her accent thickening with emotion. "She treated you badly because you are Latina? Because you didn't go to fancy schools?" "It wasn't that simple, Mama," I replied, though in many ways it was exactly that simple. "She preferred people who reminded her of herself. And now she is gone, and you have her job," my father noted with satisfaction. "Justicia. Not her job exactly," I clarified. "They created a new position for me." My father nodded sagely. "Better. You build something new, not stand in someone else's shadow." Later, as I helped wash dishes, my mother observed me quietly before saying, "You solved their problems, but you still look worried. ¿Por qué?" Leave it to my mother to see through my composed exterior. "I'm not worried, just processing. It's a big change." "Rachel," she said gently, switching fully to Spanish, "I've watched you work twice as hard as everyone else since you were a little girl. Always the responsible one, always proving yourself. When will it be enough?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when will you allow yourself to celebrate? To feel proud? To believe you deserve the good things that come to you?" She dried her hands and cupped my face. "Success means nothing if you're still fighting ghosts, mija." Her words stayed with me. During the drive back to my apartment, was I still fighting ghosts? The ghost of every dismissive comment, every overlooked contribution, every room where I felt invisible? Maybe. But Monday would be different. Monday, I would walk into Northview not as Rachel the overlooked worker bee, but as Director Alvarez. And I was determined to be the kind of leader I had always wished for. Monday morning arrived with a symbolism that wasn't lost on me. New position, new office, new chapter. I'd spent extra time choosing my outfit. A charcoal gray suit that conveyed authority without trying to mimic Denise's designer style. Professional, confident, authentically me. The office was buzzing when I arrived. Word had spread about the leadership changes, and there was a palpable energy of uncertainty, mixed with hope. As I walked to my new office, Denise's former space, now cleared of her personal touches, people stopped to congratulate me. Some seemed genuinely happy, others clearly calculating what the shift meant for them. Ethan was waiting in my office, already setting up his laptop at the conference table. "Morning, Director Alvarez," he said with a grin. "Ready to start the revolution?" "Let's call it an evolution," I replied, setting down my bag. "Revolutions tend to get messy." "Too late for that," he quipped, handing me a tablet. "Check your email. HR sent over the exit interview compilations from the past year. It's illuminating." I scanned the document, feeling a growing sense of dismay. The pattern was even clearer than I'd suspected. Under Denise's leadership, turnover had increased by 34%, with disproportionate impacts on women, people of color, and employees without prestigious educational backgrounds. The most common reasons cited for leaving? limited growth opportunities, and cultural fit concerns. This stops now, I said firmly. My first official meeting as director was with the operations team, 23 people, including 6 who had been part of Denise's inner circle. The tension in the conference room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I began without preamble. Good morning. As you all know, significant changes have occurred in the past week. I'm not here to dwell on what happened before, but to clarify what happens next. I outlined the restructuring plan, emphasizing transparency, collaboration, and merit-based advancement. I explained that all special projects would be assigned based on skills and workload, not personal relationships. I introduced a new peer review component for performance evaluations to prevent any single manager from controlling an employee's advancement. Finally, I concluded, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I was overlooked and undervalued under previous leadership. Some of you participated in that culture, whether actively or passively. I paused, making eye contact with several of Denise's former favorites. I'm not interested in retribution. I'm interested in building something better. Everyone starts with a clean slate today, but that slate will reflect your actions moving forward, not your past connections or pedigrees. The silence that followed was broken by Lisa Chen, one of the junior analysts who had been on the fringes of Denise's circle. What about the Westridge account? She asked tentatively. Denise was the primary contact, and they're expecting deliverables this week. I've already spoken with Westridge, I assured her. Ethan and I will handle the transition. Which brings me to my next announcement. I gestured for Ethan to join me. Ethan Ross is our new Deputy Director of Operational Integrity. All project reassignments will go through him initially as we realign workloads. After the meeting, Madison Taylor, perhaps the most devoted of Denise's favorites, lingered, clearly wanting to speak with me. I'd seen her laughing the loudest when Denise mocked my report, but now her perfectly made-up face showed uncertainty. Do you have a moment, Rachel? Director Alvarez? Of course, I replied, gesturing for her to enter my office. She perched nervously on the edge of a chair. I wanted to say, that is, I hope there are no hard feelings about before. I studied her for a moment. Madison had always been the epitome of the polished professional Denise valued. Ivy League MBA, designer wardrobe, family connections. She'd also been consistently dismissive of anyone outside the inner circle. Madison, let me be clear. I meant what I said about clean slates, but that doesn't mean I've forgotten. Show me you can be a collaborative team member who values substance over style, and we'll have no problems. She nodded quickly. Absolutely. I just wanted you to know that I've learned a lot from this situation. And she hesitated. I'm sorry for how things were before. It wasn't the most heartfelt apology, but it was a start. Noted. Is there anything else? Actually, yes. The Peterson proposal. I've been working on it with Denise, and I wasn't sure if you wanted me to continue or reassign it. Send me what you have, I replied. I'll review it, and we'll discuss next steps tomorrow. After she left, Ethan raised an eyebrow. Think she means it? I shrugged. Time will tell. People can surprise you. Sometimes they just need the right environment to show their better selves. And sometimes they're just saving their own skin, he countered. Either way, she'll be judged on her work now, not her connections. That's all I ever wanted. By the end of that first day, I'd held 6 meetings, reviewed 12 projects, and begun the formal process of restructuring the department. I was exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time, my ideas weren't being dismissed or minimized. They were being implemented, shaping the future of the company. As I gathered my things to leave, I noticed a small envelope on my desk that hadn't been there earlier. Inside was a simple card signed by 8 employees from various departments. Thank you for standing up. We see you. It was the perfect bookend to a day of transformation. A reminder that what had happened wasn't just about me or Denise or financial misconduct. It was about creating a workplace where everyone could be seen, heard, and valued. The ghosts weren't gone yet, but they were fading, replaced by something far more substantial. Hope. 3. Weeks into my new role, Northview was finding its rhythm again. The financial audit was complete, revealing the full extent of Denise's mismanagement. Nearly $600,000 in misallocated funds over 8 months. The board had initiated legal proceedings to recover what they could, but the damage to the company's financial health was significant, which made my next task all the more challenging. Budget. Cuts? Ethan looked up from the spreadsheet I'd just shared, his expression grim. How deep? 15% across all departments, I confirmed. The financial hole is bigger than initially projected. We need to reduce expenses while maintaining operational capacity. That's going to mean layoffs. I shook my head. Not if I can help it. I've been working on alternatives. I pulled up another document on my tablet. Reduced travel expenses, renegotiated vendor contracts, subletting the unused east wing of the office, pausing some non-essential projects. It gets us to 12%. Still leaves 3% to find, Ethan noted. I know. That's why I've called a leadership meeting for this afternoon. Everyone needs to contribute ideas. The leadership team, department heads, and senior managers filed into the conference room at 2 p.m. Some looked nervous, others resigned. Budget cuts were never popular, especially coming so soon after a major company upheaval. I laid out the situation plainly, presenting the financial reality without sugarcoating it. We need to reduce expenditures by 15% to stabilize our position. I've identified ways to achieve 12% without staff reductions, but I need your help to find the remaining 3%. The marketing director, Jonathan Pierce, was the first to respond. The most straightforward solution is to reduce headcount. It's unfortunate, but pragmatic. It's also the last resort, I countered. We've already lost valuable team members due to the previous leadership's toxic environment. I won't compound that damage. With all due respect, Rachel, he persisted, using my first name despite my position. Sometimes tough decisions are necessary. That's what leadership is about. I felt a familiar heat rising in my chest, the feeling that came whenever someone tried to dismiss me. But I was no longer the person who stayed silent. You're right, Jonathan. Leadership is about tough decisions. I agreed, my voice steady. It's also about creative problem solving and prioritizing your most valuable assets, your people. So unless you have alternative suggestions to offer, I'd prefer solutions that don't involve cutting the very workforce that keeps this company running. The room fell silent. Then Maya from HR spoke up. What about a temporary executive pay reduction? If leadership took a 10% cut for 2 quarters, it would demonstrate commitment and generate significant savings. Several executives shifted uncomfortably, but I nodded. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. I'll take a 15% reduction myself. Gradually, other ideas emerged. Postponing office renovations, implementing energy-saving measures, reducing software licensing costs by consolidating platforms. Each suggestion brought us closer to our target. By the end of the meeting, we had identified potential savings totaling 14.7%. Just shy of our goal, but without a single layoff. Impressive work, everyone, I concluded. We'll formalize these proposals and present them to the board next week. As the room emptied, Jonathan lingered, his expression unreadable. Bold move, putting executive compensation on the chopping block. It seemed fair, I replied simply. We can't ask employees to tighten their belts if leadership isn't willing to do the same. He studied me for a moment. You know, when you were first appointed, I had my doubts. Thought you might be too idealistic. And now? Now I think maybe we need a little idealism around here. He extended his hand. Well played, Director. Alvarez. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to reshape Northview's culture. The mentorship program I'd proposed was taking shape, with 15 pairings already established. The transparent project assignment system had eliminated the favoritism that had plagued the previous regime. And slowly, trust was being rebuilt. Everything was smooth sailing, of course. Madison Taylor had submitted the Peterson proposal as requested, but it was clearly Denise's work with Madison's name attached, full of the same flawed strategies and unrealistic projections that had contributed to our current financial situation. When I called her in to discuss it, she became defensive. Denise had years of experience with clients like Peterson. Her approach was proven. Her approach contributed to a $600,000 shortfall, I reminded her. We need something better. And you think you know better? The flash of disdain in her eyes revealed the truth. She still saw me as an outsider, not a legitimate leader. I think we all need to adapt, I replied calmly. Including you, Madison. This proposal needs to be completely reworked with actual data supporting the projections. I've assigned Lucia Reyes from the creative team to help you. Lucia, she's barely been here 6 months, and she has exceptional data visualization skills and fresh ideas. You have experience with the client. Together, you should be able to create something truly innovative. Madison looked like she wanted to argue further, but thought better of it. Fine. We'll rework it. Later, when I recounted the exchange to Ethan, he laughed. You paired Madison, I went to Harvard Taylor with Lucia? That's either brilliant or sadistic. It's necessary, I said. Madison needs to learn that titles and pedigrees aren't everything, and Lucia deserves a chance to shine. Speaking of chances to shine, Ethan segued, have you seen the latest client satisfaction surveys? They're up 12 points since the transition. I hadn't seen them yet, and the news was a welcome bright spot. That's the first increase in over a year. Turns out, clients prefer working with people who aren't arrogant and dismissive. Who knew? His tone was joking, but there was truth beneath it. Denise's approach had alienated clients as well as employees. The following day brought an unexpected visitor to my office. Eleanor Wright, the senior board member who had spoken up for me during my appointment, arrived unannounced. Ms. Wright, I greeted her, rising from my desk. I wasn't expecting you. Call me Eleanor, please, she replied, taking a seat. I've been reviewing your budget reduction proposals. Very creative solutions. Thank you. We worked hard to find alternatives to staff cuts. So I see. The executive pay reduction was particularly interesting. Not many leaders would put their own compensation on the line first. I shrugged slightly. It seemed like the right thing to do. It was, she agreed, which is why the board has decided to match it. We'll be taking the same percentage reduction in our compensation for the duration. I tried to hide my surprise. Board compensation adjustments were virtually unheard of. That's very generous. Eleanor smiled. It's very necessary. The culture of a company is set from the top. What happened with Denise was partly a failure of oversight, something we're determined to correct. She leaned forward slightly. But that's not the only reason I'm here. The board has been monitoring your progress closely. The mentorship program, the restructuring, the improved client relations, all impressive. We'd like you to present at the annual leadership retreat next month. Share your vision for the company's future. The annual leadership retreat had always been Denise's showcase, her opportunity to dazzle the board and senior management with flashy presentations and grand promises. The thought of, taking that spot was both thrilling and intimidating. I'd be honored, I said, meaning it. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Excellent. Oh, and one more thing. The retreat is usually held at a luxury resort in Napa Valley. Given our budget constraints, I'd appreciate your suggestions for a more appropriate venue this year. After she left, I sat at my desk, processing the conversation. In just 3 weeks, I'd gone from being mocked for my promotion to being asked to help chart the company's future direction. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Dinner Sunday. Your mother is making chiles rellenos. I smiled and replied, wouldn't miss it. Bringing flan. Some things hadn't changed. My parents' unconditional support, their pride in my achievements, the comfort of Sunday dinners. But so much else had transformed, including me. I was no longer the person who stayed silent when overlooked or dismissed. I'd found my voice, and surprisingly, people were listening. That afternoon, I passed the creative department and noticed something unexpected. Madison and Lucia, huddled together over a computer, actually collaborating. Madison was gesturing animatedly while Lucia nodded, making adjustments to whatever was on the screen. They didn't see me, and I didn't interrupt. Some changes needed to happen in their own time, without interference. Change was happening all around Northview, gradually but unmistakably. And for the first time since I'd joined the company, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months after my appointment as Director of Operational Integrity, Northview Strategies hosted its annual Client Appreciation Gala. Unlike previous years when Denise had turned the event into a showcase of extravagance, we'd opted for a more refined approach. An elegant but sensible evening at the Austin Contemporary Art Museum. Standing near the entrance in a deep blue dress, I greeted clients and colleagues, still somewhat amazed by how much had changed. Northview had not only survived the financial crisis but emerged stronger. Our client retention rate was the highest it had been in 3 years. The budget cuts had successfully stabilized our finances without a single layoff, and the corporate culture had transformed from one of fear and favoritism to collaboration and merit-based recognition. Director Alvarez, AI, familiar voice called. I turned to see James Peterson, CEO of Peterson Industries and one of our most valuable clients. This is quite different from last year's circus. I smiled, extending my hand. Change can be good, Mr. Peterson. Indeed it can, he agreed, looking around approvingly. Especially when it's thoughtful change. That proposal your team put together, Taylor and Reyes, was it? Brilliant work. We've already implemented the first phase. I'll let them know you're pleased, I replied, making a mental note to recognize Madison and Lucia's successful collaboration. Their redesigned proposal had been innovative and data-driven, combining Madison's client knowledge with Lucia's fresh, creative approach. As Peterson moved on to greet other attendees, Richard Hammond appeared at my side, looking unusually relaxed in his tuxedo. "We've signed 3 new clients this month," he said without preamble. "All referrals from existing clients. The board is ecstatic." "That's excellent news," I replied. "The team has been working incredibly hard." "They have," he acknowledged. "Under the right leadership." He paused, then added more quietly, "I received a call from Denise's attorney yesterday." I stiffened slightly. Though I'd moved forward professionally, the mention of her name still triggered a visceral reaction. "Oh? They're proposing a settlement. She'll return a portion of the misappropriated funds in exchange for us dropping the more serious allegations." "What did you tell them?" "That I'd consult with the board, but my initial answer is no." His expression hardened. "She betrayed this company's trust. There have to be consequences." Before I could respond, Ethan approached, guiding an elegant older woman toward us. "Rachel, there's someone who's been looking forward to meeting you." "Director Alvarez," the woman said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Victoria Westridge. My husband speaks very highly of you." I recognized the name immediately. Charles O. Westridge was the founder of Westridge Communications, another major client. "Mrs. Westridge, it's a pleasure. Your husband isn't with you this evening?" A shadow crossed her face. "Charles passed away 3 months ago. Heart attack." "I'm so sorry for your loss," I said sincerely. "Thank you." She squeezed my hand gently. "I've taken over as CEO, and I wanted to assure you personally that our relationship with Northview will continue. Charles believed in what you're building here." As she moved away to greet other guests, Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Victoria Westridge is legendary in Austin business circles, very selective about who she works with." "I'm honored she's continuing with us," I replied. "It's not just about the company," he clarified. "She specifically mentioned you. Apparently, Charles told her about the leadership change and how impressed he was with your integrity." The evening continued smoothly, a testament to the hard work of our events team. As I circulated, I was struck by how many people now approached me with genuine respect. Not the fearful deference Denise had commanded, but authentic appreciation. Near the dessert table, I encountered Madison. Taylor, looking elegant as always, but somehow softer than before. The rigid perfectionism that had defined her under Denise's leadership had given way to a more authentic presence. "The Peterson implementation is going well," she offered without prompting. "Lucia's visualization dashboard has been a game-changer for their analytics team." "So I heard," I replied. "James Peterson specifically mentioned your work together." Madison smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Working with Lucia has been educational. She sees things differently than I do. It's refreshing. Different perspectives strengthen outcomes," I noted. "That's the whole point of building diverse teams." She nodded, then hesitated before adding, "I've been meaning to say this for a while. I was wrong about you. About a lot of things, actually. The way Denise ran things, the people she valued, it wasn't healthy. I see that now. The admission clearly wasn't easy for her, and I appreciated its sincerity." "Thank you for saying that, Madison. We all had adjustments to make. Some bigger than others," she acknowledged with a self-deprecating smile. "Anyway, I just wanted you to know that I'm grateful for the second chance." As the evening wound down, I found myself on the museum's rooftop terrace, taking a moment of quiet reflection. The Austin skyline glittered against the night sky, beautiful and full of possibility. Footsteps behind me announced someone's approach. It was Eleanor Wright, elegant in a silver gown that complemented her gray hair. "Hiding from your own successful event?" she teased. Gently. I smiled, just taking a moment to appreciate it all. "You should," she agreed, joining me at the railing. "What you've accomplished in 6 months is remarkable. Financial stability, improved client relations, a transformed corporate culture. The board couldn't be more pleased." "It wasn't just me," I demurred. "Everyone stepped up." "Because you showed them how," Eleanor countered. "Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about bringing out the best in others." Something Denise never understood. We stood in companionable silence for a moment before she continued. "I have some news that hasn't been announced yet. Richard is retiring at the end of the year." The information caught me by surprise. "That's unexpected." "Is it? He's been CEO for 12 years. The Crisis with Denise took a toll on him. He feels it's time for new leadership. She turned to face me directly. The board will be conducting a search for his replacement, of course. But I wanted you to know that your name is at the top of our list of internal candidates. My breath caught. CEO of Northview? 6 months ago, I'd been fighting to have my voice heard as a mid-level coordinator. The trajectory was dizzying. I'm honored, I managed, but I've only been in leadership for 6 months during which you saved this company, Eleanor finished for me. But this isn't an offer yet. It's a heads up. The formal process will begin next quarter. You have time to consider if it's something you want to pursue. After Eleanor returned to the party, I remained on the terrace, processing our conversation. CEO had never been my ambition. I'd simply wanted to do meaningful work and be valued for my contributions. But perhaps that was exactly why the board saw me as a potential candidate. I understood what Northview needed because I'd experienced its failings firsthand. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Where did you disappear to? Maya's about to give the closing toast." I replied, quickly, "On my way," and took one last look at the Austin skyline before heading back inside. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But standing there, looking out at the city lights, I finally felt free of the ghosts that had haunted me. The doubts, the insecurities, the need to constantly prove my worth, they hadn't disappeared completely, but they no longer defined me. What defined me now was something much stronger, the knowledge that I had stayed true to myself through the darkest moments, and emerged not just unbroken, but powerful in a way I'd never imagined possible. 1 year to the day after Denise's termination, I stood in front of Northview's assembled staff in our renovated main conference center. The room was at capacity, with nearly 200 employees gathered for the announcement I was about to make. "Good morning, everyone," I began, surveying the faces before me. Some familiar, many new. Northview had grown significantly over the past year, adding 37 positions across departments. "Thank you for being here today." From the front row, Ethan gave me an encouraging nod. Beside him sat Lucia Reyes, recently promoted to creative, team lead, and Madison Taylor, who had transformed from Denise's most devoted acolyte into one of our most innovative account directors. 1 year ago, Northview faced an existential crisis, I continued. Financial irregularities had threatened our stability. Trust, both internally and with our clients, was at an all-time low. Many predicted we wouldn't survive. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Everyone remembered those uncertain days. Today, I'm proud to announce that not only have we survived, we've thrived. Our client retention rate is 94%, the highest in company history. We've expanded into 2 new market segments. And most importantly, our employee satisfaction scores have increased by 62%. Applause broke out, genuine and enthusiastic. This success belongs to every person in this room, I emphasized. From the newest intern to the most senior director, each of you contributed to this remarkable turnaround. I paused, taking a moment to meet the eyes of several employees who had been particularly instrumental in the company's transformation. Maya from HR, who had revamped our hiring practices to eliminate bias. Jonathan from marketing, who had initially resisted my leadership but ultimately became a strong ally. Lucia, whose talent had finally been recognized and nurtured. Now, I have several important announcements to make. First, as you know, Richard Hammond retires next month after 13 years as CEO. All eyes shifted briefly to Richard, who sat at the side of the stage, looking both proud and slightly emotional. After an extensive search process, the board has selected Northview's next chief executive officer. I took a deep breath. I'm honored to share that I have accepted their offer to serve as the next CEO of Northview Strategies. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Ethan whistled loudly while Maya beamed with pride. Even Jonathan nodded approvingly. "Thank you," I said when the noise subsided. My journey at Northview began 7 years ago as an unpaid intern. I've worked in almost every department, built systems from the ground up, and yes, cleaned up a few messes along the way. Laughter rippled through the audience. But my second announcement today is actually more important than the first. Today, we're formally launching the Alvarez Initiative. On the screen behind me, a logo appeared. Simple, elegant, powerful. The Alvarez Initiative has 3 components. First, a comprehensive mentorship program that pairs emerging talent with senior leaders, with particular emphasis on supporting employees from underrepresented backgrounds. I clicked to the next slide. Second, a complete overhaul of our promotion and compensation structures to ensure decisions are based on objective criteria, not subjective evaluations or personal connections. Another click. And third, the establishment of a protected reporting channel for employees to raise concerns about ethics, workplace culture, or financial irregularities without fear of retaliation. The room was silent now, everyone absorbing the significance of these changes. In other words, I concluded, we're institutionalizing the lessons we learned during last year's crisis. We're building safeguards to ensure that no single person, including me, can ever again create a culture of favoritism, exclusion, or financial impropriety. Richard stood and approached the podium, joining me on stage. The board has unanimously approved the Alvarez Initiative, he announced. And furthermore, they've allocated $1.2 million to establish these programs not just within Northview, but as a model that can be shared with other organizations facing similar challenges. The announcement was met with another round of applause. As the meeting transitioned to departmental updates, I stepped off the stage, suddenly overwhelmed by the journey that had brought me to this moment. From the overlooked coordinator whose report was mocked as a waste of office ink to the incoming CEO implementing company-wide reform, it was almost too much to process. Ethan appeared at my side, reading my expression with the intuition of a close friend. "You okay there, CEO Alvarez?" I smiled, grateful for his steady presence throughout the past year. "Just having one of those how did I get here moments. By being exactly who you've always been," he replied, simply. The difference is that now everyone else sees it too. The afternoon passed in a blur of congratulations and planning meetings. By 6 o'clock, the office had emptied, but I remained at my desk, reviewing the transition documents Richard had prepared for me. The responsibilities ahead were daunting but exciting, a challenge I now felt ready to embrace. A notification popped up on my computer screen, an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "Congratulations." I hesitated before opening it, somehow knowing who it was from before I saw the signature. "Rachel, I heard about your appointment as CEO. Congratulations. It's been a difficult year of reflection for me. My actions at Northview cost me my reputation, my career, and nearly my freedom. The legal proceedings are finally over, and I've agreed to full restitution of the misappropriated funds. I don't expect forgiveness or understanding, but I wanted you to know that I recognize now what I couldn't see then. Your value, your vision, your integrity. The qualities of a true leader that I lacked. I wish you and Northview continued success. Denise Marshall." I stared at the screen, unsure how to feel. There was no satisfaction in Denise's downfall, no vindication in her admission, just a quiet acknowledgement that justice had eventually found its way. I closed the email without replying. Some chapters were better left closed. My phone rang. My mother, calling for our weekly check-in. "Mija, did you tell them yet? What did they say?" I smiled at her enthusiasm. "Yes, Mama. They announced it. Today. Everyone seemed happy about it." "Of course they're happy. They're lucky to have you." Her pride was palpable even through the phone. "Your father is telling everyone at his job that his daughter is a CEO, the man at the grocery store, the neighbors, everyone. Tell him to save some of that excitement for Sunday dinner," I laughed. "I'll bring the flan." After hanging up, I gathered my things to leave. As I walked through the now quiet office, I passed the wall where employee photos were displayed, a tradition I'd started to help everyone learn names and faces as we grew. So many new faces, so many stories yet to unfold. My gaze lingered on my own photo, taken on the day of my promotion to director. I looked serious, determined, perhaps a little unsure. Beside it now would soon hang my official CEO portrait. Outside, the Austin evening was warm and vibrant. As I walked to my car, I thought about the journey ahead, the challenges and opportunities, the responsibility of leading an organization that had nearly collapsed under poor leadership. But I wasn't afraid. I'd learned that the greatest power isn't in demanding respect or creating an exclusive inner circle. It's in building something so unshakable that when challenges come, and they always do, you have the strength, the support, and the integrity to face them head-on. I'd learned that you don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to know your worth and act like it, even when no one else does. And finally, I'd learned that respect isn't given to the loudest. It's earned by those who work silently, steadily, and refuse to be erased. As I drove home through the city I loved, I felt a profound sense of peace. The office politics, the exclusion, the public humiliation, all of it had led to this moment of transformation, not just for me, but for an entire company. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, There would be difficult decisions, competing priorities, inevitable setbacks. But tonight I allowed myself to simply acknowledge how far I'd come. From the daughter of immigrants who cleaned offices at night to pay for college, to the CEO of a company that now bore the imprint of my values and vision. It wasn't just a personal victory. It was proof that integrity, perseverance, and quiet dignity could triumph over politics and favoritism. That sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is not anger or revenge, but excellence. And that was a lesson worth all the struggle.